All right, Monaski's all in a tizzy over my comment that I felt that the latest Claudia Tenney mailer, which I received because I'm a part of her district, was crossing the line. And why do you feel that I'm wrong? And then I'll bring the senator in on this.
Well, I don't think that. Let me say this first. She is getting money to send this out from the state, and she's not running for that position again. So I don't think she should be allowed to.
It's a disservice to not have sent out these mailers, to save up these mailers for the congressional campaign is a disservice to her constituents. Those mailers are put in place, that budget is put in place to send them out to inform the district of what is going on, how can their input be utilized, what their opinion is, and maybe reach out. How do you use them, Joe?
Well, it's always
everybody can use them their own way, though.
Correct.
How you use them might not necessarily.
And the other issue is while Cuomo is on the front and on the backside, it's health care. That health care is a congressional issue.
I would argue, though, gay rights, state and federal. Gun rights, state and federal. The economy,
you're
minimum
sending
wage.
it out 62 days before your congressional election, and it just so happens the headline just so happens to double as a state and federal issue.
Education,
Come on.
Common Core, that's a state and a federal. There's a lot of these that cross.
I understand, but are you trying to tell me that isn't put out as a congressional mailer? Do you really believe that?
She's not running for
re-election.
re-election.
And if she wanted to save the taxpayers,
it's appropriate.
If she wanted to save the taxpayers' money, which she always claims she does, how about voting against mailing it out? She votes against everything else. How about voting against mailing that mailer out because it is a waste of our taxpayer dollars? Senator Joe Griffo.
I enjoyed listening about the question.
How do you use these, and what does the state allow you to use them for?
Again, this is a procedure that's given to legislatures, federal, state, because you have vast constituencies, big districts. You represent a lot of people. How do you communicate with them regularly? You try to get around. But it's somewhat cumbersome sometimes. I have a 3-hour ride from one end to the other. So one of the opportunities given to the legislature is to communicate with your constituents through mailing. You're given a certain budget for that, and you're always going to get some type of criticism one way or another, why you're using it, how you're using it. I try to follow some simple guidelines that I imposed. We try to inform people about report to people on what's taking place in Albany, like an end of budget. Here's what happened in the budget. Here's what happened at the end of session.
Isn't that what they're really supposed to be for?
Yeah, well, I mean,
to inform your constituency of
right. You're supposed to communicate. Is what they're for, is to communicate. How you use them can depend upon the personality.
But they're really not meant as advertisements, and that one is an advertisement.
But I'm saying everybody can look at them different ways, and everybody makes a judgment. But I use it to inform, to report, and to survey.
The limits of the guidelines to benefit your campaign.
Many use them that way.
But it's essentially, some people use them in weird ways. There was somebody that was leaving the legislature and had sent a mailer to thank their constituents for having served them, and had all kinds of pictures of their career. And I laughed at that, looking at it, thinking, I don't know how that's helpful to the constituents, but it was not improper or to do. And they were leaving actually to join the administration. So I think when you're leaving is when you have more of an issue that you're discussing. Somebody's leaving the legislature, and how do you use it, and why do you use it?
And I think she's leaving, and she votes no on everything for very principled reasons. Voting no on sending this out and wasting our tax dollars would have been a nice gesture. Instead, she chose to use it as a commercial for her campaign for Congress. State money being used for a federal campaign.
Bill, you do commercials. Commercials. You don't advise campaigns, but if you were advising a campaign and you had the opportunity to use this in the same situation,
I wouldn't have been so blatant. I wouldn't have been so blatant. No, because I make money when people do direct mail. I produce direct mail pieces.
But that's true.
So I don't want them to use the state tax dollars. Pay me to do it. So I'm the wrong person to ask. There's a conflict of interest for me.
That's true.
In fairness. Hello, Joe Griffo.
I enjoyed listening to you. Both have interesting perspectives. Yeah. But I think just my answer to you is just that's what it's for, how it's generally used, and each member can and is allowed the discretion to use it
any way they want. But it could also come back to hurt you in the way that you use it. It could, which is why it seems like you use them very, very carefully. Although you don't have an opponent, so doesn't
Well,
matter.
you still have to communicate. I think the most important aspect is you need to communicate with
Right.
people. And there are a lot of ways to do that now: social media, earned press, mailers. And if you're in a campaign, obviously political
Knocking on
advertising,
Radio interviews.
knocking on doors. I mean, we do a lot of things. We do.
Can I also say you can tell the difference between a state mailer and something that you might pay me to do? Because the something that I might do, I'd go through maybe PJ Green
Right.
and do a high gloss, something that's very colorful. The mailers that come out of the state there's limits to it, and a lot of them are on a flat, almost like maybe a 2-color or 3-color type thing, and right,
Yeah, I'm not sure how the
almost black and white, at least in the assembly anyway.
Yeah, the Senate does things a little different, but they're basic. It's not.
And so does a congressional piece is a high gloss, really a beautiful piece that's put out. But in the state, at least in the
Like
assembly,
we'll send out something now very shortly in a couple of weeks to let people know about our recycling event, which will hopefully have
Which is
you
a
all
huge
talk about
event.
again. This
Yeah.
time it'll be in the western end of Oneida County. It'll be on October. I think it's October
Joe,
1st.
let me tell you, you have no idea what you're starting. By then, I'll be an Oneida County resident, and
October-
I have more stuff to bring from
October-
Herkimer County to your event.
It's October 1st in Rome this year.
I have stacks of
You
computers.
can bring. I mean, we don't discriminate against where you're from. You know, as long as you
They
bring
bring
it.
it.
That, the idea is that we're trying to show you how you can protect and preserve the environment.
Yeah.
Do it by recycling electronics.
And you can't
paper,
even
and
throw
medication.
and like the computers, you can't throw them out anymore.
Correct.
You know. All right. We'll
Just one more quick thing. You know, if you hear a radio ad, you'll hear them this morning that say, this message paid for by, I believe that has to be on mailers as well. When it comes from the state, is there anything on there that has to say,
It says
The state does.
you're paying for this?
on the return address. You'll have their title. It'll say Assembly Person so and so or Senator so and so.
Okay.
And the address.
That's how you know.
Right.
if it is their assembly address, then you know, because you can't mix those two up. If it's the campaign address, then it would be from the campaign.
And today is primary day, and there's a good question.
Noon to 5, noon to 9 today.
Noon to 9. I have an issue with that because there different areas of the state have different times for primary. I really think we should have a uniform time. I know people are concerned because we have a number of primaries, and that's another whole show probably
Especially
to talk
with
about.
you take a district like Claudia Tenney's current assembly district. Now there may very well be a chance that it's noon to 9 here, but maybe it's noon to 7 down in Orange County. I mean, that's terrible. It makes it so difficult for the candidate. I mean, there's no and why do we have 3 primaries this year?
Well, that's another discussion on 3 primaries. We have to come together in Albany and come with a uniform date. This originally started because of some federal laws in order to ensure that military ballots were counted, and the September primary was right on the border. There wasn't a guarantee that would be met. So as a result of that, we're still debating, should it be in June, should it be in August? I think we should have a uniform primary, but I believe closer to September is better, and you could allow for a lot of different types of early voting so that people who are on vacation still can vote.
One
So that's
thing
another whole show, but
Yeah.
there's, on both sides of the issue, there are those who believe it should stay, should have stayed where it was, which we can't. Those who agree with August, those are who want June. So we can get into that, but the time, though, I think should be consistent.
At the end of the day, we had a presidential primary.
Correct.
We had a congressional primary,
Federal.
a state primary, and now a general election coming up in November.
The difference is the federal.
Which,
and
by the way,
state.
the other thing I want to say,
Presidential will always be off because
I understand
they set that.
But those 3 primaries, or those 2 primaries, the federal and state primaries, cost the Board of Elections in each county a lot of money.
Well, absolutely. There's cost involved in that, and that's why there's more and more discussion. We need to find that consensus to agree on a date for the state and federal, because the presidential will always change, or they can designate at different times. Now we're in April, and it actually worked to our advantage this year because it was a contested primary.